Welcome one, welcome all to DeFi Crypto and Airdrop slash DeFi University, where we teach beginner DeFi Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time. And with me, as always, is David from DeFi University. He is the heart and soul of this show and our show later today at 3 p.m. Pacific, where myself, David, and Jake Call from Luminary Assets, creator of Metrics Finance, a DeFi portfolio tracking tool and liquidity pool simulator, a free tool. Like most of the stuff that we have here, we like to offer free stuff, high quality. But David, what do you got for us today?
Oh man, so today, let's go ahead and hop into it, Mike. What I want to cover today is lesson 4 in the DeFi University, actually the DeFi High School course hub. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's hop to it. I'm going to make sure to share audio this time so that you guys can hear this. That's probably a good idea. Okay, so in the DeFi University course hub, and I just want to let everyone know how you can find this. This is a totally free resource. If you're on the main website, defiuniversity.xyz,
Oh,
and then
hold on, let's kick it over. Really quick. I was showing David this. Saw it on social media, real quick, down at the southern tip of South America in Chile. You can scroll in, and it's probably just it's. I'm sure that this isn't exactly what it looks like from space. You can
it's
kind
a
of see it's like
giant.
weird.
That's what it is.
It's the Nephilim, man. I
Yeah,
think that it's the Nephilim. It's the fossilized remains of a Nephilim, man.
I think that's what it's got to be.
All right, let's kick this off. Here you go.
Cool, man. So over here on the website, so the way that you can find all of these resources, it's totally free. They're in 2 places. The first place is in the free school community, and you can just join that right here from the website, totally free. And then the second place is in the course hub. So if you click through to the course hub here, it's going to bring you to your account hub where you can track your progress through all of the courses. We're going to start off today over in, if I just hit continue learning, it's going to take me to courses.defiuniversity.xyz. And we are in the money basics course. And so today we're going to hop through lesson 4, and then we're going to take a look at lesson 5. I haven't quite finished turning the quizzes into those little HTML interactive quizzes yet. So we're not going to be able to go through this quiz. It's not quite published yet. So we're going to go through lesson 4, and we're going to go through lesson 5. So lesson 4, the unfinished story of money. This is going to be interesting. So all of these different forms of money over time,
So
what we've gone through so
real
far.
quick, those of you that maybe just joined us, we're about 3 or 4 episodes in. What would actually no, I think we're what 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes in because we
Mhm.
started last Monday. So what we're doing is we're just doing a slow progression, kind of explaining, what crypto is, what money is, what, the traditional finance system, and leading up to, getting into DeFi. It's important that you understand what exactly DeFi is and how exactly and why it's gaining so much traction. Why it is that this technology is going to change our financial system on a huge scale. So we're explaining kind of throughout history advances in currency and these sorts of things and the banking system and things like that, so that you have a greater understanding of why what is happening right now is so important. So David, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You really are going to have a more difficult time building your crypto and DeFi skill set if you don't already know at least a little bit about money, and the history of money and what it actually is. And so I think that going through this all of this DeFi high school content, it really helps you to build a foundation. You need that as you start to build your own DeFi skill set over time. So today, Mike, let's see if we can get through both of these lessons. We might actually be able to get through more than this, but let's go ahead and I'm going to hit play.
All right, let's jump right in. When you think about money, what pops into your head? Probably a dollar bill, right? Or maybe some coins. But here's a wild thought. What if money isn't really a thing at all? What if it's just an idea? A piece of technology, really, that we humans have been tinkering with and upgrading for literally thousands of years.
To really get what I'm talking about, how about a quick game?
I'm going to show you three things, and I want you to think, what could they possibly have in common? Okay, first up, we've got a simple cowrie shell. Now, for more than 3,000 years, all across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, these little guys were the go to currency. Why? Well, they're small, they're durable, and believe it or not, they're surprisingly hard to fake. In fact, some parts of Africa were still using them well into the 1900s. That's
Hmm.
incredible. Next on our list, a giant limestone wheel. And when I say giant, I mean it. Some of these were up to 12 feet across. The Yapese people of Micronesia used these as money. But get this, they were way too heavy to actually move around. So what did they do? Everybody just kept a mental record of who owned which wheel.
So, Mike, isn't that an example of shared consensus or like a distributed ledger? If all of the people in the community agree that this massive, 2-ton stone with a hole cut in it, that is worth something, isn't that, if they all agree on it, the shared consensus? Would you say that that is?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
that's kind of the basis of, most things of value, is a shared consensus that it holds value.
Same thing with these shells, right? So, you go from shells to massive stones, and then we're going to see the progression here. Let me continue playing this content.
It was, for all intents and purposes, an ancient public ledger. Hmm, does that sound familiar to you at all?
Right?
And for our last one, a pinch of salt. Yeah, just
Salt.
plain old salt.
Wow.
Back in ancient
So, what
For
are
a
those
time,
sayings, Mike?
the same as gold.
Yeah. So there were a
Like
lot of
an ounce.
sayings. The military
Oh, go ahead.
guys in Rome, right? Didn't all the military guys, like a lot of them, get paid in salt? And that was where the phrase came from. Like worth his salt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of cool, right there.
Rome, salt was so incredibly valuable that soldiers would actually get paid with it. And
Yep.
here's the cool part, that's exactly where we get our word salary from. It comes from the Latin salarium, which literally means salt money. So there you have it,
Salt
shells,
money.
giant stones, salt.
They kept it
There you
simple
have it.
back in the day.
They were all money. These were humanity's very first attempts, our first experiments in trying to fix the messy, chaotic world of just trading stuff for other stuff, pure barter. But that begs the question, right? Why did shells and salt work out, but something like, I don't know, lettuce wouldn't? Well, it
You exchange your lettuce for goods and services.
turns out that over time, we figured out there are basically five big rules for what makes good money. It's got to be durable, it's got to be portable, you have to be able to divide it up, it needs to be scarce, and of course, everyone has to recognize what it is.
So, all of those different words, you hear that all the time when people debate different digital assets. So, durable, portable, divisible, and scarce. Those four things are what they say, are four of the attributes that make good money.
So eventually, most societies around the world kind of landed on the same solution: metals. Think gold and silver. I mean, they were perfect. They ticked all five of those boxes beautifully. But this created a whole new problem. It turns out lugging around bags of heavy metal coins is a real pain. Plus, there's only so much gold and silver you can actually dig out of the ground. So it was time for an upgrade. And this next step led to one of the biggest leaps in the entire story of money, what I'm calling the Great Abstraction. We're moving away from physical stuff and into a world of ideas. Okay, so this first big upgrade, it happened way back around the year 1000 in China. Here's what they did. People started taking their heavy coins to a safe place for deposit. In return, they got a piece of paper, basically an IOU. And it didn't take long for them to realize, hey, wait a minute, it's a lot easier to just trade these lightweight pieces of paper. It was like a software update for money. Version 2.0 solved the weight problem. But hold
So, doesn't that kind of remind you of the what the Medici's did with the letters of credit?
Oh, yeah.
Solving the
No, I
weight
mean, the
problem?
Templars did it, the Medicis did it. It looks like it was, done potentially over in China and Japan, and
Yeah. Now, I wonder why the explainer focused on the Chinese model rather than the Medici model. This
no,
seems like,
maybe it'll explain.
yeah.
2.0 solved the weight problem. But hold on, that paper IOU was still tied to a pile of coins sitting somewhere, right? It was still connected to something physical. The next
You
step,
hope.
well, this was the most radical one yet. It was about cutting the cord completely, moving from gold to pure, unadulterated trust. And this move is what created the system we all live in today. See, under the old gold standard, a dollar bill was basically an IOU for a tiny piece of actual gold sitting in a vault. Simple enough. But now we have what's called fiat currency. So, what's a dollar a promise for today? The answer is kind of mind bending. It's a promise for another dollar. That's it. Its value isn't tied to anything you can touch. It comes entirely from our shared belief, our collective trust in the government that prints it.
Now, it's so funny, Mike, because yeah, I heard you laugh, and I would laugh too, because it's no longer backed by anything. But based on the examples that we've just seen, does it need to be backed by anything in order for there to be this shared consensus, this shared belief that it has some type of value? I don't,
Well, not
you know,
not for the
I don't think
belief
so.
not for the belief aspect, but for the actual tangible value, yes. Because if we were still on the gold standard, back in the day when it was actually printed, I have a couple in my safe, dollar bills and $5 bills and $20 bills that say silver certificate or gold
Right. Yeah,
certificate.
it says you can
And you
redeem
could
it
actually
for.
you still are supposed to be able to go in and redeem those, like it was saying, for a small amount of gold or silver. And that you can see, I mean, the minimum wage back in the 70s was like $1.25. So basically 5 silver quarters that have 90% silver. That those same 5 quarters today, I forget exactly how much, but it's over $100 worth of silver now. So that money kept its value, or its buying power, whereas this fiat, it just keeps getting inflated and inflated and inflated away. So that's why I chuckled.
Yeah, me too. I definitely would too. I think that this explainer, from my perspective, it is more about like the theory of what is money. And so, this fiat, it's got the same, shared consensus that gold does. I mean, there's no intrinsic value in gold or silver, but the problem with the fiat is the tokenomics are broken. You know, that's the problem. Like you can't have, an inflation rate of 2% and, expect that it's going to be able to hold its purchasing power. So that's why in 1970, you had a minimum wage of a dollar and people could, buy a home on one salary with a wife and 2 kids and a dog. You could have that because back in 1970, it wasn't quite as broken as it is today in 2026. So it's all the same type of idea, right? The shared
Yeah.
consensus around something that really doesn't have any intrinsic value. It's just that what our monetary overlords have done is print away what little value this actually has. So they've broken it. The tokenomics are broken. Such a
Mhm.
shame.
And here's the kicker: this huge fundamental shift didn't happen in some distant ancient past. This happened in 1971. That's the year the United States officially cut the dollar's ties to gold. And in doing so, it completely changed the game for money all over the world.
Now, why did they cut the ties to gold? Well, I don't know exactly why, but we can take a look and see what the results have been. It seems as though the gold tie was cut so that the dollar could be printed, so that it could expand. That's
Because
what it
they
looks
gave the
like.
gold to the lizard people that are
I
actually
know.
running the world.
I think that's exactly right, man. And they just wanted to expand it away. Man, horrible.
So, once money was based on pure trust, it's at the stage for the world we live in right now. Because as soon as money was untethered from physical stuff, it was free to become what it mostly is today: pure, simple information. Now, this might actually blow your mind a little. Did you know that only about 8% of all the money in the world exists as physical cash and coins? Just 8%. The other 92%, it's just digital ones and zeros in
So most of our money is literally just a spreadsheet somewhere. That's amazing.
bank computers. I mean, think about your own wallet. The average American carries something like 67 bucks in cash. The rest of it, for most of us, is just numbers on a screen. Okay, so that brings us right up to today. But here's the most important thing to remember: this story isn't over. Not by a long shot. This is an unfinished evolution, and it is still happening right now, all around us. And when you look at it through this historical lens, something like cryptocurrencies suddenly makes a lot more sense. It's not some weird, bizarre thing that came out of nowhere. It's really just the next logical experiment in this thousands of years long story. It's an attempt to solve what some people see as a problem with our current digital system: the fact that we have to put all our trust in intermediaries, like banks and governments. That right there really gets to the heart of this whole thing. There's a quote from the source material that just nails it. There's nothing sacred about our current system. It's just the latest version, and versions can be updated. Think about that. The money we use today isn't some permanent sacred institution. It's just the latest software patch on a very, very old technology. And we all know what happens with software. It can always be updated. So that leaves us with one big final question to think about. We've watched money evolve from shells to stones to metal to paper, and now to pure information, all to solve real world problems like weight and trust and distance. The question we're left with is this: what problem will the next version of money try to solve?
Maybe the next version will try to solve that quantum issue. Because if quantum can actually break all of the encryption, well, it'll destroy money, the digital money, but they'd probably go after something a little bit more important first than money. But have you seen Rick and Morty, Mike? Have you ever watched that?
I've heard of it, but no, it's not something
There's
I
a
watch.
so there's a scene, a short scene in Rick and Morty where there's like a galactic president, okay, and his advisors run into the room and they say, "Sir, the galactic dollar has just gone from being worth one of itself to zero of itself." So the currency collapsed overnight, and so maybe if quantum is really a threat, maybe it would just go after money first, because what the president's reaction is to shoot himself in the head. And this isn't Rick and Morty, okay? It's a cartoon, a TV show. But let's take a look at this. How do banks actually work? This will be interesting because we were talking about this fractional reserve banking last night. We were talking about it yesterday too. So this
Okay,
would be
so
great.
you trust them with your money every single day. We all do. But have you ever really stopped to think about what happens after you deposit your paycheck? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on how banks actually work. And, the answer might surprise you. On the surface, it seems pretty simple, right? You put money in, you take money out. But what's happening in between? Is your cash just sitting in some giant vault with your name on it? Well, it turns out the reality is way more dynamic, and it's basically the engine that powers our entire economy. So to really get our heads around this, let's start with a super simple analogy. Let's just forget about spreadsheets and interest rates for a minute. Instead, I want you to picture a huge, bustling swap meet and a really helpful guy named Bob. Just picture it. Thousands of people, all trying to trade, buy, and sell stuff. It's kind of chaotic, right? Not very efficient. And you've got to carry all your valuable things around with you. It feels a little risky, doesn't it? Then right in the middle of all this chaos, this guy Bob sets up a booth. And he says, "Hey, give me your stuff. I'll keep it safe for you."
Bob sets up a booth and says, "Hey, give me your stuff.
Give me your stuff.
Don't worry,
Trust
keep it safe
bro.
for you. Just
Trust me,
bro."
If you want to trade with someone over there, just tell me, and I'll handle the whole exchange. Oh, and by the way, if you aren't using some of your things right now, I can rent them out to someone else and give you a little cut.
Oh, and by the way, I don't have any of your stuff. As soon as you give it to me, I'm just going to rent it out to someone else.
Yeah.
Just like that, it clicks. Bob is the middleman. He's providing security, convenience, and a way to make your assets actually work for you. In a nutshell, Bob is your bank. He's taken the chaos of that swap meet and created an orderly, trusted system out of it. All right, now let's scale up Bob's little booth to the massive global industry we know today. It turns out his 3 simple services perfectly mirror the 3 core jobs of any modern bank. So what are those jobs? Well, first, there's safekeeping. That's just you depositing your money. Second, you've got payments. That's the bank moving your money around so you can pay bills or buy a coffee. And third, and this is the big one, lending. That's the bank using all those deposits to give out loans for cars, houses, and new businesses.
So, Mike, is it true that banks can actually create money by creating credit? Isn't that like a form of shadow banking? Is that?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
mean,
true?
I guess if you think of it that way, where they take your deposit in. I know that fractional banking system everybody always talks about, where, for every dollar, that they take in of yours, they can lend it out like multiple times. So, I mean, that basically through credit, they're printing money. They're putting more, money out there.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what it seems, right? So maybe the banks are also a source of inflation. I guess that's possible. It could be. And maybe they're also a source of, expansion of the money supply.
Now, here's an idea that might feel a little backwards at first. When you deposit cash into your account, you're not just storing it. You're actually technically giving the bank a loan. They get to use your money, and in return, they just promise to give it back to you whenever you ask for it. So how do banks make a profit? It's all about something called the spread. They take the money you've lent them, your deposit, and they pay you a tiny little bit of interest for it, maybe 0.5% if you're lucky. Then they turn right around and lend that same money to someone else for, say, a car loan, and charge them 7%. That difference, that gap between what they pay you and what they charge someone else, that's their entire business model right there.
Right. So it's called the net interest margin. So when a bank receives a deposit, that becomes their liability. And so if they don't pay anything on the deposits and immediately lend them out and earn, I don't know, 7% lending them out to someone, maybe much more than that. But then they don't have
more than that. If they're lending out the same dollar multiple times, it's 7, plus 7%, plus 7%, plus 7% every time they lend it out.
That's the leverage. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're levering up, and they're in what we're potentially looking at right now is our whole banking system getting liquidated.
Isn't that crazy to think about? So what is it they say about complex systems, Mike? They fail slowly and then all at once. And I certainly hope not. But with watching gold and silver just go straight up, I think what's going on with gold and silver actually is people are demanding physical delivery, and that has never happened before. So I think that the gold and silver and the metals might be a little bit different here, but the way these banks work, man, they don't have our money, and they never did, and that's the whole point.
Okay, hold on. This brings up a huge logical problem. If the bank is busy lending your money out to other people, how is it also available for you to withdraw whenever you want? This is where we get into what honestly feels like a kind of magic trick. Now really think about it. If your $1,000 is now part of the loan for someone's new car, how can you just walk up to an ATM and pull it out as cash? It can't be in two places at once, can it? This question gets to the very heart of how modern banking works. Well, this little magic trick has a name. It's called fractional reserve banking. It's a system where banks are legally required to keep only a small fraction, a fraction of the money you deposit as actual cash sitting in the vault. And the rest of it, they're totally free to lend it out. Let's make this crystal clear with a really simple example. Let's say you walk into a bank and you deposit $1,000 cash. Great. Your account now says you have $1,000 available. But what happens behind the scenes? So here's what the bank actually does. It's required by law to keep a fraction, let's say 10% on reserve. So that's $100. But the other $900, it's immediately loaned out to another customer to start earning interest for the bank. Now, let that sink in for a second. Your $1,000 now exists in two places at the same time. It's your account balance, and it's also someone else's loan. The whole system.
That must only be possible because they've made it legal. Otherwise, I don't see how that would be legal, right?
No, and just because something's legal, I mean, a lot of, this is, applies to a lot of topics. Just because something legal doesn't mean it's right. It just means that the government decided to say it's okay.
And what if for every $1,000 deposited, the bank only keeps 2%? So they only keep 20% as a reserve and loan out the other 98%. You could easily get to a 50x leverage ratio really, really quick. So these banks use a ton of leverage, even if they're using 40x leverage. I think, Mike, that 40x leverage, I've read somewhere that that's like a normal leverage ratio for like some of these big bulge bracket banks, like Bank of America. That kind of boggles my mind a little bit.
It's not sustainable. Like who? Because these are intelligent people that are making these laws and running these banks and running the Fed. The Fed, they have hundreds and hundreds of PhD level freaking economists. And it's just, I mean, me with, being a, military vet, ground pounder for 22 years, if I can, see what I'm seeing, I'm nowhere near, their level. So what the hell are they doing?
Well, maybe it's about that belief, right? If everyone believes that the bank has their money and they don't actually know or understand that the money's not there, if
It's a
people
shell game.
believe, yeah, it's like kind of a con almost. If you can
Yeah.
con everyone into believing that the bank has your money, then people might not freak out. But if all of a sudden people knew this, that, hey, your money's not there, it's loaned out 40 times over, and the bank is actually insolvent, essentially, well, then they probably demand their deposits back. So
Dude, our chat is like so based and knowledgeable about these topics. It's like,
I can't even see it, man. I wish I could see the chat. What are people saying?
oh, just like, I'll just pick out some of them. Says, if the banks have to file taxes, would fractional banking not maintain negative margins for tax harvesting? To the banks, government politicians said it's okay, but I want some of that cash. The bank doesn't lend to us. They fed the Fed window money overnight. I pay you, you pay me, and I'll print the dollars. We're good. Banks
So
are evil.
what that last comment said about lending at the Fed window overnight, um,
Yeah.
that was actually the reason for a couple of months ago in
Well,
November.
that's repos, isn't it?
The repos. So that part of what got that SOFR, so up above the upper Fed funds band, was from what I read, J.P. Morgan withdrew. That bank withdrew like several $100 billion from that facility and stopped providing it so that they could buy treasuries. Essentially, that's what I understood from it. Um, so yeah, I don't know, man. I definitely know that some of these banks blow up from time to time. I think one of the most famous of them was Lehman. Lehman was, had like a $40 trillion derivatives book. So you can really lever this stuff up. And that was in
Well, and
2008.
wasn't it like countrywide for real estate? They were levered way too high when it came to residential real estate in 2008. I think Wells Fargo was the one that bought them out.
Yeah, yeah, that's another great example. So the bank doesn't have your money. People think the bank has their money, and that's why that's probably why these banks even exist, is because people have faith or belief in something that's not real.
Someone else's loan.
Well,
Whole
lose consensus.
Right, right. It's the consensus. It's the same mechanism that we saw with the shells and with the big stones and with the coins with a hole in them. It's just the shared consensus. Same thing here with these banking institutions. It's just a different form of shared consensus. And then the next step is to get it to Aave, where it's trustless. And the shared consensus is in the smart contract, where the code is law and it's public and verifiable. It's no longer opaque. So,
And it can't be manipulated, like our current money system.
right, there's no human to, pull the strings from behind some curtain somewhere. It's all out in the open and the code is law. And I love that about DeFi.
system, this entire financial architecture, it all relies on one big bet, that we won't all show up on the same day demanding all our money back at once.
Exactly.
When that bet goes wrong, when panic sets in, you get what's known as a bank run. And frankly, that's the whole reason stuff like deposit insurance was created, to keep us all from panicking and keep the system stable. So, this system obviously provides a lot of value.
I don't know. I mean, look, in the absence of anything else, then yes, the system provides value. But when you've got this parallel financial system of DeFi, then you look at the traditional banking system and you think, man, that is totally broken and that is extractive. And yes, it provided value when you didn't have an alternative. But now that there is an alternative, it's time to upgrade. and get into, the modern era of digital banking.
Those of you that have watched Idiocracy, upgrade with 2Ds for a double dose.
Oh man. So that movie was basically like, looking forward in time. Hor-
Dude, it starts out as a comedy and it ends as a documentary.
I know.
It's like-
Isn't it crazy?
Fuel the economy, but it's not free. There's a trade-off. We get some very real benefits, for sure, but we also pay a price in a few different ways for being a part of it. So what do we get? Well, on the plus side, we get security. Our money is a heck of a lot safer than it would be stuffed under a mattress. We get amazing convenience, like debit cards and online payments. We get access to credit, which lets us buy homes and start businesses. And we get that government-backed deposit insurance, which acts as a really important safety net. But what's the price we pay for all that? Well, we earn incredibly low interest on our savings, often so low that we're actually losing money to inflation.
It's
We pay
horrible. Think about that for a second. So this upper right image here. So if you're earning 1% in a savings account, let's say, or even 3% in a savings account,
but if inflation's 7,
then you're actually losing 4% just to hold your money. So that means that you need to make, at least 7% just to break even. Just to break even. It's horrible.
all sorts of fees.
And so that's the broken tokenomics. That right there is the reason why we no longer can have one man with a wife and 2 kids with one salary providing for his family anymore. That is the reason.
by design?
I think it has to have been by design, or maybe it was a byproduct. Some conspiracy theorists would probably say, but don't even forget about that word, right? That phrase, conspiracy theory. Like some historians, you could probably just look back in history. You don't have to call them disparaging names.
Well, look what getting the mother, the wife out of the house and into the workforce did. It like almost overnight doubled the taxable base. The amount of people out there working, so there's more taxes. And if you want to get even deeper, some people say got both parents out of the house. Now, basically, the state or the government is raising your kids in school.
So it definitely could have been that was,
Sorry, I'm getting us on a rabbit trail.
It's not though, because all this stuff is interrelated, and it's not tinfoil hat. It's just that. Do you think that there were actually people who thought that far ahead and were smart enough to think that far ahead, or
Yes.
were they actually just like basically retards? And like they just wanted to be able to inflate the currency, and a byproduct of that was that now both parents at home need to be working. That was just the byproduct.
Honestly, I don't think with the amount of people and the level of intelligence of some of these people, it has to be by design. If it was like one stupid person, but with the amount of people, it's all greed based. It's all about control. It's all about keeping power. I think it's very loosely formulated, and depending on, because they all want the same thing. They all want to stay in power and they all want to get rich, and they understand that making their buddies rich that keep them in power benefits them and benefits their buddies. It's really as simple as that. Doesn't matter if there's a D or an R next to their name.
Yeah, so the broken tokenomics of the dollar, that has created so many problems. And that's that upper left-hand corner image right here.
Maintenance fees, overdraft fees, transfer fees.
Oh, and that's another thing. These fucking fees. Like, what is this about? Like,
well, at least in DeFi, those fees go to those of us that are providing the liquidity,
there
not
are
the
no
bank.
fees. There are no fees in DeFi.
Well, when you swap
Not
and things
really.
like that, very small fees.
Yeah, but like, you're not just being scammed. Like if
No,
you're paying
not at all.
slippage or like a swap fee, like that's part of the game. That's, the price of doing business is slippage and swap fees. You don't have, overdraft fees or account maintenance fees, or it's Tuesday, the 3rd Tuesday in the month fee or whatever. You don't have any of that in DeFi. But in traditional banking, it seems as though the entire business model is how can we extract money by charging fees for nothing? That seems like that's basically what it is.
We also pay with our time, navigating all the complex rules. And of course, we pay with our privacy by giving the bank a complete detailed map of our financial lives. Okay, let's zoom out one last time. Because of this super central role they play, banks have become something more than just middlemen. They've become the gatekeepers to the entire modern economy. To do almost anything big, buy a house, start a business, you need to get past them first.
And I can't wait until that is no longer the case.
Well,
Imagine, Mike.
you've pretty much done that.
Yeah, well, I have, but I'm
Yeah, with
talking
either.
about. Oh, yeah, but that's just like, one stepping stone in the future that I envision here. And imagine if the deed to your house was tokenized, okay, or the title to your car was tokenized, and you wanted to sell it. Well, all of a sudden, you don't need a bank or an intermediary to sell your house. You can literally just send me the token, the NFT of your house deed, and I would
Yeah.
send you Bitcoin or stables or ETH or whatever you
Whatever
want,
you put in that smart contract. You
right?
can you can say that, like say somebody wanted to buy my property here and they have, two, lesser valued properties. They could say, I'm going to trade you these, two other, bare properties for your one property with a house on it, and put that in the smart contract. And then you can put all the details where, there has to be, an inspection done. There needs to be free of encumbrances or any liens. There it needs to be whatever, there's just
Yeah, anything,
like a
anything
checklist,
you can
and all
imagine.
of those have to be checked off before that smart contract executes and transfers the ownership of everything involved.
And you just transfer it from wallet A to wallet B. And then that transfer, the settlement is nearly instantaneous. There are no fees, there's no middleman, there's no broker. It's just, you've removed so much friction from the process of buying or selling a home, a piece of property, or literally anything. So it removes the need for this trusted middleman, this gatekeeper. And all of a
Well,
sudden, yeah,
and all the people in between that, you're paying, because you got, real estate agents that are taking a combined 6%. You got the title company, the escrow company. You got all these different people that, in the mix that are, thank you, thank you, thank you. And by the time it's all said and done, you might be losing, as the seller, especially, you might be losing 10% or more.
so, this is the future where these gatekeepers have been removed from the process of buying or selling any piece of property. And I can't wait to get there. I hope that we get there this year.
Yeah.
And for a truly staggering number of people on this planet, getting that approval is just out of reach.
Think about all of the people who are, so-called unbanked, right? People who don't have traditional bank accounts. Um, that is a huge opportunity for anyone who wants to build a DeFi protocol, because you can just go to like Southeast Asia, build a protocol that is permissionless, and all of a sudden, all of these people have access to these services. So, if anything, in the United States, the regulation could stifle innovation, and that's what I'm most worried about. Is that the legislation that looks like it could be passed this year? Those two bills, the DCIA and the Clarity Act, those two bills, if they are written in such a way to favor banks, to favor these big institutions that we're trying to upgrade from, then it'll just stifle innovation. And all the people in the United States that are working to build DeFi protocols, they're going to have to go overseas. Because if you can't build something legally here because it costs too much to do it, you've got to go through too many hoops, you've got to hire too many attorneys, you got to grease too many palms, so to speak, then people are going to go to other jurisdictions where they don't have to worry about that. And all they need is a keyboard and they can build the next billion-dollar protocol. So,
Well,
yeah.
and another part of that, I'm glad you brought that up, the whole unbanked thing. So a major thing happened, and it's why I love Starlink so much. No, not just because I use it, but everyone in the world that has a smartphone, is able to connect to the internet now, via Starlink. So you can be in the middle of nowhere, hell, even in Antarctica, in Africa and, Southeast Asia. It doesn't matter where you're at. You can get Starlink And now you can participate in the financial system. Add to that DeFi to where people can, basically hold their own value and earn with their own value that used to go to banks and institutions. This is the great equalizer, the great financial equalizer that we've all wanted. And it's I honestly think it's why they're beating us down so much right now. As far as devaluing the dollar and stuff like that, so people can't afford to generate and save liquidity to get into this, get into DeFi and get into crypto early, to where they can free themselves from this system, because the system breaks down if the masses are able to earn and don't have to go to work and pull the lever and stamp the paper and hit the keyboard and stuff like that. They lose their power. Their power over us is that we have to go to jobs that most people don't like to earn that paycheck to keep a roof over our head and food on the table. So the more that they can keep us, there's that sweet spot. They don't want to tramp us down too much, because if it becomes less painful to rise up than it does to just exist in the system, then you get revolutions. But if they allow you to get too profitable, then you break free of the system and they don't have enough workers. So
Yeah, I think that I'm much, much less worried about some type of revolution. I'm just
oh,
thinking,
it's
yeah,
just I'm just saying historically that's what happens.
yeah, I'm just thinking like, raising the standard of living for everyone globally, but focusing first on Americans, like America. Like I want to make sure that Americans, that our standard of living increases. And of course, I would love for everyone around the world to, join in the fruits of all of this. But I think it's got to start here. It's got to start here. And if that regulation, if those bills pass and they're bad bills, then we're going to be shipping all that innovation overseas. And so all of these people who, these could be Americans benefiting from this DeFi innovation. But if it gets shipped overseas via bad regulation, then man, that would really, really suck. I'm hopeful that that won't happen.
Take a look at this number, 1.4 billion. That's the number of adults globally who are completely locked out of the system we've been talking about. So what does that actually mean for them?
It means 1.4 billion adults don't even have a basic bank account. They're what's called unbanked. They can't get past the gatekeepers, maybe because they don't have a government ID or a fixed address or the right kind of financial history. So they're stuck on the outside, forced to rely on cash or maybe expensive check cashing services, alternatives that are way less safe and way more costly.
So, the funny thing about this is, Mike, down here in Florida, go shopping at Walmart, and I see people use Walmart like kind of like their banking service. Like there are all sorts of things you can do with your, debit cards at a Walmart, where you're just there, like at the grocery stand, like checking out. Like that can be your bank. And so I see people do that a lot. These informal banking relationships, but those
What do you mean by that? Like, what are they doing?
oh, well, you can get cash back, or you can exchange bills, or you can send money, you can
Oh,
receive
gotcha.
money.
Okay.
All of these services that a traditional bank would perform, you can
Yeah, that you'd
do.
go to a teller, window,
Yeah,
and yeah.
exactly. But you can do all that stuff in a slightly different way, right there at the check stand when you're checking out at a Walmart.
Mhm.
So like that, those services, I see a future where all of that is done on your phone in crypto on a DeFi protocol. And I think it's just a matter of time, but it's also a matter of abstraction, because right now, these DeFi protocols, I think, are much, much too complicated for, the little lady like at the Walmart check stand, like getting cash back against a debit card. I think that that transaction makes sense to her, but the complexity of supplying an asset on Aave and borrowing against it, and then connecting that to a swipe card, and then being able to spend at 4% and earn 6% on your collateral, like that whole thing is an interest rate arbitrage. It's very complicated to understand, And if that could be abstracted away, then all of a sudden the people who are, either unbanked or using informal banking relationships like the grocery stand at Walmart, the check stand at Walmart, they could use that on an app on their phone if it was very, very easy to use and the complexity wasn't there. It was abstracted away. I think
Well,
that's
I mean,
where this is
it's
going.
kind of what Coinbase is doing using Morpho vaults and, being able to earn on your Bitcoin and ETH. It's projects like EtherFi and Moonwell, that are allowing people to
Sure.
earn. I was just reading where I think it was in our newsletter this morning. I think it was Kraken is working with Aave, and let me go ahead and keep talking. I'll pull that up.
Yeah, I'm interested to learn about that. All of these, centralized exchanges, for me, I don't use any of them. I use no centralized exchanges. I am completely bankless, myself and my business completely bankless. And I think that's the way it needs to be. We need to move to a decentralized future.
And that leaves us with a final, really critical question to think about. We've seen that banks aren't just middlemen, they're the entry point to our entire economic world. They are the gatekeepers. So, what does it mean for individuals and for our whole society when those gates are closed? What happens to the people who can't get in? That's something worth thinking about.
So the people who can't get in, they will be able to get in very soon just based on using a cell phone, a smartphone. So I'm looking forward to that future. And I think what we need to do is build that future. So, Mike, we've got, it looks like 12 minutes left. You want to see if we can get through some of lesson 6, how interest works? This could be interesting here. How interest works, understanding interest.
Today, we're going to break down one of the most powerful financial concepts out there: interest. Seriously, it's this hidden force that's either pushing you forward or holding you back every single day. The whole point here is to make sure you're the one in the driver's seat. So, to really get our heads around this, let's start with a really simple question. I mean, we all know what it's like to rent an apartment or a car, right? But what if you could rent money? Well, here's the thing, you already do. We all do. And this one idea that money itself can be rented is the absolute master key to understanding everything from your savings account all the way to your credit card debt.
Okay, so let's really dig into this whole renting money idea. Because once you start seeing interest through this lens, believe me, the entire financial world starts making a whole lot more sense.
And here is the most crucial part: it is a two-way street. When you take out a loan, you pay the bank interest for the privilege of using their money. But when you put money into a savings account, the bank pays you interest to use your money. And this slide just
And that's so funny because that's not true. The bank doesn't pay much interest.
No.
lays it out perfectly. You're either the renter or the landlord. When you borrow, you're the renter, paying for a loan. But when you save, you get to be the landlord.
So what if
No, the bank does, and
I-
they're like, "Here, peasant, you can have a little bit of it."
please, sir, may I have some more
Exactly.
soup?
Can I have
Please.
more of my money, please?
Please, sir.
Renting out your cash to the bank. So the big question you always have to ask yourself is, are you paying the rent or are you collecting it? But that brings up a really good question. Why? Why does interest even exist in the first place? Why can't you just borrow $100 and pay back exactly $100 later? Well, the answer has everything to do with time. It really boils down to three main things. First, there's opportunity cost. If a lender gives you their money, they can't use it for something else. Second, there's risk. There's always a chance the borrower just won't pay it back. And third, you've got
Not a problem
inflation.
in DeFi.
That money they get back from you in the future, it's going to buy less than it does today. It's like a shopping cart with a slow leak.
Mhm.
So they call all of these things together the time value of money, right? I think so.
So the interest rate you pay is just the price for all three of those things bundled together.
All right, now for the mechanics, because this is where we see the real power of interest. The way it's calculated can lead to wildly different results.
So think of it like two flavors. You've got simple interest, where you earn interest only on the money you first put in. It's straightforward, it's predictable. But then you have compound interest.
Oh man, this is the real game changer. This is where you start earning interest on your interest, creating the snowball effect that just gets bigger and bigger. Let's look at the numbers. We start with $1,000 at 5%. After year one, they're exactly the same. Year two, the compound account is ahead by $2.50. By year three, it's up by about $7. So you're looking at this and thinking, big deal, right? A few dollars. But trust me, we're just getting started. And bam, fast forward 30 years and just look at this.
I love how it just says, and bam, just fast forward 30 years. Like, no big
It
deal.
happens that fast.
Yeah, just fast forward 30 years, and all of a sudden you got $5,000.
30
That single interest
years.
account
I
grew to
know.
$2,500. Not
It's like, well, what if you die tomorrow? Like it's not doing you any good.
bad.
No.
The compound interest account, it exploded to over $4,300. That's almost double the earnings, all from that tiny little effect of earning interest on your interest.
In
That
only 30
power of
years.
snowball.
I know.
There's this
30
great quote.
years.
People say it was from Einstein, and it just nails it. It really is the eighth wonder of the world. If you get it, you earn it. If you don't, you pay it. There's really no middle ground. Okay,
I think
this
it wasn't it
important.
Benjamin Franklin that talked about the power of compounding interest?
Yeah, yeah. All of those brilliant minds have.
Because this is where banks can get a little tricky. You're going to see two acronyms, APR and APY. APR is just the basic interest rate without compounding. APY is what you actually get after compounding is factored in.
Huh.
So here's the pro tip.
Okay.
When you're saving, banks
I never knew that.
I actually didn't either.
Yeah, I always
And I'm kind of ashamed to say
I
that.
never knew that either. Oh, that's great. You see, learn something new every day.
Yeah, we're
high
learning.
APY.
Yeah.
When you're borrowing, they'll whisper the lower APR. If you want a true apples to apples comparison, always look at the APY.
So you know how, Mike, in some protocols it will tell you ROE or
Yeah, return on investment or
return on equity.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so it's basically like,
Sorry, I actually had ROE, rules of engagement, in my head from the military. It's
oh,
the rules
gotcha.
that dictate when you can return fire and engage and things.
Right. Yeah. So
I was like,
yeah, my understanding of the ROE in DeFi is that it's basically your APY on your invested assets for that specific period of time that you're earning that yield. So, actually, Mike, in DeFi U today, during the portfolio clinic call, I'm going to be deploying some capital live. And so there's going to be an opportunity to talk through ROE, APY, and APR in the plays. that
and
I'm
if
gonna
any
be
of you are interested in that, there's a link in the description of all of our shows that will take you to where you can join that. Those live calls are $97 a month though. Everything else is free.
Exactly.
All the courses that we're going through here, and the advanced courses and the intermediate courses, all that's free. Just the live calls is 2 calls a day, Monday through Friday. But it's $97 a month.
Yep, that's right.
So let's bring all this into the real world, because that compounding force we've been talking about can be your absolute best friend or your worst enemy. Let's look at the dark side first, debt. Just look at how this plays out in a credit card debt spiral. It all starts with a $5,000 purchase, but then you get stuck in the minimum payment trap. And because that high interest rate is compounding against you every single day, it ends up taking over 17 years to pay off. And the final price tag? That $5,000 thing actually costs you more than $11,000. It's like you're running on a financial treadmill,
Wow.
going nowhere fast while the debt just keeps getting bigger.
Now,
Happened with those student loans. That's what everyone's complaining about with those student loans, is they pay on them for a decade or two, and they end up owing more than they initially freaking started with because they're making minimum payments.
yeah, man, it's just, I don't think it's a good idea to be allowing 18-year-old kids
No.
to take out $100,000 in debt at 12%, because when you're 18, at least when I was 18, I didn't understand any of this shit.
No.
So and the concept of a $70,000 debt at 12% did not compute. I did not understand what that
Well,
actually meant. you know?
And the people lending need to freaking, have a couple brain cells to rub together too. You're basically investing in a small business, the small business being that person's education and their ability to get that education, take that education and go and earn to be able to pay that back. And when they're going for, a gender studies degree or a master's in the cello, they're not going to be able to pay that
Hey,
back.
I like cellos.
I'd love the cello, but the issue is you need to get a return on the investment. And if we're investing in somebody's education, it needs to be in STEM. It needs to be in the sciences and math, and they're going to be an educator of some kind. Otherwise, I mean, you're going to get a bunch of people who can't pay their loan back. So
Right? It just doesn't make sense. Like you can't give these massive loans to children, to kids. I mean, technically you're an adult, but like, dude, like 18, I didn't know shit. So like,
oh,
you can't
Wispy's
give.
saying that he has a cousin who's a doctor and still hasn't been able to pay theirs off.
Yeah. So it's got to be restricted in some way. Like you can't be able to get a $50,000 loan to go to school to, learn how to do a profession where you're not going to be able to pay that loan back ever. Like that just doesn't make sense. You can't get free money to go to school to learn how to do something that doesn't pay anything. That's just a losing game. So
I avoid all debt. I mean, my property, my cabin, I paid for it all with cash. I have no credit card debt. I refuse to play that game because once you get into debt, it's like this fucking black hole that just sucks you in and does not let you go. But DeFi is great because, yeah, I mean, I can take liquidity, I can lend it out where I can earn, I can take out a loan against that. And, basically, if you do it right, you can actually earn off of taking a loan out. You can actually make money off of taking a loan out. And I mean, the worst thing that can happen if you just totally mess it up is you lose, around 20%. If the loan to value is 80%, then, if you get liquidated, you're
nah,
going to
man, you
lose.
can go to zero if you make a
Well, you
mistake.
can
You
if
lose
if you get
everything.
into like super risky, plays where you're like looping and things like that. But if you just simply do a lend and a borrow, it's I think much safer than traditional loans.
Only if you understand what you're doing. And so
Yes,
that's the reason
absolutely.
why we're going through all this content so that
Yes.
everyone can start to build the foundation. Because if let's just, I know we've got 1 minute left, but if you hop in here to Aave, let's say, and you're looking at this dashboard and you connect your wallet and you start taking a look at these different markets and you lend an asset and you borrow against it and you don't really understand what it is that you're doing, things can go badly very quickly, and then you won't know how to fix it. So you've got to build that foundation first before you hop into even a basic money market like Aave. So that's why we're doing this here today, every single day. So Mike, I think that is the end of our time today. A good call starts and ends on time. So
It does.
it does, man. And what do we
Well,
have
let
going on?
me
We've got Jake Call later today, yeah?
Yeah, it's today at 3 p.m. Pacific. That would be 6 p.m. Eastern. And this is what I was talking about real quick. Introducing Kraken FX, the exchange, DeFi Earn powered by Aave. Users can now deposit cash and stable coins into dedicated vaults on the Kraken platform. It's a centralized exchange to earn yield from DeFi's most trusted lending network. So Aave is basically doing what Morpho did with Coinbase. Aave is doing with Kraken. This is the evolution of DeFi. This is what's happening right now. So continue to watch these shows. I know that some of this stuff is very rudimentary, it's very basic, but it's important that everyone understands how the current financial system works and the issues, the pain points with it, and how this new financial system, how DeFi and crypto blockchain technology, is being introduced to get rid of or mitigate the pain points and the issues in the current financial system. So stick with us. again, I know a lot of you in the chat are very advanced. You know, a lot of people are in your community, David, like, you know, Big Lou and stuff like that. So, yeah, just make sure that you're learning this stuff, because me and David, you know, as advanced as David is, I thought that APR and APY was just a different way of saying the same
I
thing.
didn't even know that. You know, I
Yeah.
knew they were different, but I didn't know exactly how.
Exactly. And that said it, you know, very simply, is APR is, you know, kind of the interest rate,
The
you know,
base rate.
that are, you know, and then the APY is the interest rate, you know,
Yield.
plus compounding.
Right, plus
So,
compounding. Yeah.
yeah.
That was
So
pretty good, man.
absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
thank you all, David. Thank you again, and we'll see you later today. Until
Awesome.
next time,
See you, Mike.
Veteran Crypto out.
Peace out.